There we go. All right, welcome everyone. For any of you who I haven't met, my name is Jay Mortensen, or Jennifer Mortensen, but I go by Jay. And I am, as Paul was mentioning, recently joined the Washington State Historical Society in the outreach department with Allison Campbell, who I think you all know. As about 2 months ago. So it's been a super exciting opportunity and I'm really enjoying it so far. And we've been working with Mara Walsh at the Secretary of State's office at the State Library to get this opportunity to historical museums and historical organizations. There's funding available for libraries, and we've been working to make sure that historical societies are also able to access some of this funding. And so we asked Mara to come and do a workshop about it because it's a pretty specific program. So we want to make sure that everyone understands kind of what you can ask for and how much you can ask for. I don't anticipate we'll go the whole hour today. Mara has a few slides and she's gonna go ahead and pull up the application as well. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. And then of course, if you have questions later, feel free to reach out directly via email. So I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Mara. And if you wanted to say anything else introductory about yourself, Mara, go ahead. But other than that, we can get started.
Okay, I am sharing my PowerPoint. Is it going? Yes, there. Okay, great. Always a little iffy at the beginning. So my name is Mara Walsh. I'm the Grants and Contracts Manager at Washington State Library. And we were funneled money from the ARPA, the American Rescue Act plan. I think plan is the last word, yeah. Anyway, we've been calling it ARPA for so long now that I'm not sure. Some of you may have received money from us last year for CARES, and we did outreach and PPE grants that were available to museums and historical societies. So the funding that we receive now, we've also tried to make available, but the outline of what we can do with it has changed just a little bit. So the site that's on the bottom of this Washington State LibGuides, that's what I'm going to walk you through in these slides, because really all the information you need is there. So if we start out here, I've copied across the top, just to get rid of, yeah, I've copied across the top what the actual LibGuide banner looks like. And I've put an arrow to the tab that is for museums and historical organizations. So it's just a small amount of information in there, but it is specifically for you as opposed to for libraries. So we've defined who can apply. A nonprofit museum, you have to be open to the public, have dedicated staff, which can be volunteer, and regular hours with exhibits, okay? We cannot make grants to your friends group or your foundation. So if you are only run by a foundation or only run by a friends group, then you probably cannot get this award. If you are a municipal museum, you probably have to go through your city, but we'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about a contracting authority. So here's the interesting part, and that is the amount that you can apply for. And these amounts are based on your 2019 annual visits, which is sort of the last normal year we had, I think. So, and as you can see, we've divided into 3 categories. So the second tab that I think you'll be interested in is the one that's marked allowable expenses. When you're in a tab, it shows up in green on the banner. So it helps you keep track of where you are. On the right-hand side of the screen, I've copied from that tab an extensive list of things that you could pay for with this grant. So the wording at the top, you'll see more than once, and that is that it's intended to help communities respond directly and immediately. So that was the congressional intent in Washington, D.C. when they passed this act. So this act was channeled to the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences, from there to the Library Services and Technology Act, and they're the ones who distributed to us because we have the mechanism in place to help get money to others. So it should be an immediate response, but it can be related to economic and community needs as long as we have an equity piece involved in that. So this is a list of the focal areas that we expect your project to fall into. Connectivity, digital equity and inclusion, equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism, workforce development, and needs arising from the pandemic. So if you still needed like plexiglass shields or something like that, you could enter that in needs arising from the pandemic. So PPE would still be available under this award. Allowable expenses. So in broad terms, these are the things that you can spend your money on. So here, I think an important one is that salaries and benefits for temporary staff that are employed on this specific project. So it can't be for your museum in general, but if, for example, you're doing an outreach program, let's say, for example, you decide that you will buy a bicycle and kind of trick it out so it represents your museum. And then you will buy grab and go bags with activities for kids, and you will take it down to the farmer's market and wheel around and hand these out to children who would normally be patrons at your museum. So you are doing connectivity in your community, and we would be able to pay for the bicycle. We'd be able to pay for the materials that you're giving away, and we'd be able to pay for the staff person doing that, as long as it's not a regular full-time staff person. Okay, so that's kind of broadly what we're talking about here. And the next to last point, subscriptions and licenses within the grant period that support digital inclusion efforts. If you wanted a subscription to, say, a database or something like that, you could do it for only the period of the grant, and we would prorate it. So if your period of everything ends June 30th next year. So if you were to start it in January, we could pay for those first 6 months. And we just divide the cost of the yearly subscription by 6 months, and that's the amount you'd be entitled to use. And the last point here, which I think is pretty important for you, is indirect costs. So as long as you're not charging us, or, as long as you don't have a line item that is like photocopy paper or something like that, which you could have, but we kind of discourage that. Indirect costs would be for any cost that you have relating to the project, sort of just general overhead would be another way of saying it. And you are allowed to include up to 10% of the total amount in indirect costs. Now, this is inclusive. It's not on top of the award amount. It's included in the award amount. But it's a way that might give you, just a little bit of wiggle room for covering costs that you have that maybe aren't directly project related, but they are related to your organization. Okay. So again, directly and immediately responses to the pandemic. We'd like to put this in a lot of times because this is the thing that might trip you up. If we have a very short and simple rubric with about 6 checkboxes, and we'll go through your applications. And if you miss those, that is why your application would be rejected. Every project must address one or more of the focal areas, and they also cannot be predominantly staff training. So we don't consider that immediate and direct community impact. Oh, so sorry, my little arrow up there is pointing to sample project ideas. And in addition to that, I pulled out a couple of things that I did for another presentation for libraries, but I thought they would probably apply to museums as well. But that's why you only have Plan C and Plan B and no Plan A or Plan D. So exterior connectivity, outside Wi-Fi. If you already have Wi-Fi in your museum and you want to use some boosters or routers, I think they're called sometimes too, you could purchase those and then say you want to put some picnic tables outside so people could come and use the Wi-Fi. That would also be an expense that we could pay for. And it's just an idea of something small that you could do. Plan B is the children's programming. Sorry, I got two P's in there. Or story trail, or there's a copyrighted one that's called storyboards, I think. And I don't know if you've seen this or not, but it's like a series of posts that goes through, like if you have a garden area around your museum or a nearby park, you could do it anywhere and have it sponsored by the museum. What you actually do is take a children's book and you make it into one page on each post. Picture books really work well for this. And sometimes you could have activities or questions that go along with each page. And we can give you more information and send you to websites about this. But we would suggest working with a Washington author, perhaps, or something related to your museum. So that's just an idea that might be interesting. We have seen this done with, they make the political yard signs that are wire and then like a hard plastic sign. We have seen them done like that. And then they're considered a portable story trail because you could take it to various events around your community and use it over and over again. So the last tab that I wanted to point out is the FAQ, frequently asked questions. And there we've divided, so there's a ton of questions you could ask, and you're always welcome to email us. We try to be very responsive, but we've divided these into 3 different areas. Award reimbursement and contracts is the first column. And when you go to the page, you'll see there's a huge column underneath it. Applications and allowable costs. And then SEPA, which is the Child Internet Protection Act, and other things. If you're buying any device that connects to the internet, you have to be SEPA compliant and have a SEPA agreement. That is a federal regulation. We have no wiggle room on that at all. And also I wanted to point out that because this page is quite dense, it is also searchable. So by holding down Control and F, a window will pop open and then you can search for anything that you want within that page. You can do it on each of the pages, but it will only search within the one page. Okay, I think that is the end of my little PowerPoint. I thought that I maybe would walk you through the application form if you'd like to see what that looks like. Yes? Okay. Start sharing again. Let's see. Sorry, I got to find the right one. I tried to close things down so I wouldn't have too many open, but it looks like I didn't do a good job. Oh, sorry, just a second. Let me. Oh, I know, because I've got my Zoom meeting open. Just a second, if I go into that.
I've got the link handy if that would help.
Well, I've got it so I can look at the whole, I've got it on the SurveyMonkey site, so I can look at the whole thing without having to.
Oh, to enter in a.
Yeah, here we are. Can you see it?
I can't see it yet, so you'll have to
share screen again. Yeah.
Yeah, and then find the screen that pops up. It'll show you Windows to find which one is the right one.
Well, maybe would you mind just sharing it? Because I think that I have this open through my VPN, and I think maybe I can't do share screen with that. I think it doesn't give me the option of that one. I'm sorry.
Can everyone see it?
I can't, but that's because I'm still stuck there. Now I can. Okay. So many of you, well, many know. I would say at least a half a dozen applications we have received in the wrong application form, because it looks exactly the same, but we have one for libraries and one for museums, because we have different parameters. We're not doing libraries by annual visit numbers. So we had to, it's virtually the same application, but just slightly different. So we can send out a link to this, although it is also in the LibGuide. So you can see everything in the LibGuide. I'm sorry, I should have shown you that is on the left-hand screen. Left hand of the screen, you can see everything. Well, we can visit the LibGuide later if you want to too. Anyway, so this is just general information about it. Do you want to go ahead and scroll down and go to the next page? Then if you just put like one letter in each box, it'll let us go through to the next page. Yeah. Here. So statewide vendor number, DUNS number, and tax ID number. Those are numbers that we need in order to be able to reimburse you and make your contract. So if you do not have those, ask your fiscal department. If you do not have a fiscal department, ask your bookkeeper. If you belong to a municipality, it will be theirs. If you belong to a university or school, it will be theirs. But those are vital because without that, the state has no way to transfer funding to you. Okay. So the contracting authority, this is important. This is the person who has the legal authority to commit the applicant to a contractual agreement and to receive federal funding. So this is, if you're not this person and you don't have this person within your organization, that's when you need to go up the chain and find out who it is. So, and it's important because since this is federal funding, it's called an audit schedule, and all federal funding must be counted together on the audit schedule. So the total amount is what determines which audit schedule the organization is on. So if you were to accept funding or to receive funding and whatever level wasn't aware of that, they could be non-compliant with their audit and get a finding, which is big trouble. So that's why that's very, very important. Okay. So I think if you can keep putting ones in, we can get to the next page. Thank you. Whoops. All right, this is okay, so aside, the contracting authority could do the whole thing, or it could be somebody different. So if it's someone different, this is what we want to know, because this is how we're going to determine who we need to contact and who's going to be doing the little report for us at the end and stuff like that. So here's the important part, the number of visitors. You just need to select one of those radio buttons. I think you can just go next here without having done anything. And then you have to be able to answer yes to all of these questions. Just a checklist for us. Whether or not you have a child in, we want to know the answer to the last one. Even if you don't have it, not having it does not mean that you will not get an award. You can still get an award, but we just have to double check that we're not giving you an award for anything that connects to the internet. So that's our responsibility first and yours second. So our due diligence is to ask for it here. And like I say, it may or may not be material. Okay, we can go on to the next one. Sorry, I didn't. Okay, so we're going to provide a summary of your grant proposal using the form in the LibGuide. And I've had some questions from people because we're not asking you actually to write a narrative of what you're doing. We're just asking you to put in the things that you're going to purchase and the prices. And that is a file that you can upload here very easily. And your indirect costs can go in there too. So it's kind of like a mini budget. We believe that seeing what you're going to order or purchase with your award and with the information in the following question about target audience, we believe we'll have enough information to understand what you're doing and to say yes or no. So if we have questions, we will contact you and we can either just ask you our questions and just go on, or we might have to ask you to resubmit some information. But we're not asking for a narrative. We wanted to make this really simple and fast for people. So that's kind of our thinking behind that. Okay, and I think you can go on to and this is a submission page, which some people do not do. We will not get it if you don't do it. So just, it's just a double check. Have you done everything you should? And you just put yes, and then you click to submit. And Bob's your uncle. You are done with your application. Right. So if you have questions, I am happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. I think I muted everybody. So if we want to use, we can try to maybe use the raise hand feature, so folks aren't talking on top of each other. And I did want to just quickly share one more thing, which is this is the proposal form that you could download on the
Oh, thank you.
On the website. So as Mara was saying, we've got these categories here, but it's literally just a list and an estimated cost. It's not, you don't have to describe, the whole project plan or anything like that in a narrative form. It's just very basic list. And if units apply, and then estimated costs. So you can see the different categories here. And I hope you saw in the form that it will have you upload this document. And I think, Mara, you had it in both an Excel and in a Word version.
Yes, that's correct.
So whichever is easiest for folks to use. Obviously the Excel is, will do calculations for you, but if you're not comfortable with that, we could use the Word.
Yeah. Would you go up to the top there? See where it says application code? That is only for libraries, because we need to keep track of what kind of library it is. So by not entering a code, we know you're a museum or a historical society, and so you don't need one less step.
Yes, don't worry about that. Okay, I'll go ahead and stop share again. We had a couple of questions in the chat, but let's start with Elsa. She's got her hand raised. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. My screen is all of a sudden going wild with a whole bunch of things that are blocking you guys out. There we go. My questions are, is this a reimbursable grant?
Yes.
Yes. And so we will submit. Okay, I'm also babysitting my daughter's puppy who's now trying to knock me over. So maybe all sorts of things happening. I apologize. All right. So you're not, do we get we apply for it, and then we submit.
Yeah, can I walk you through the reimbursement? We will, once we have a contract established, we will send you, again, a short, simple reimbursement with the things that you're eligible to be reimbursed for. And you will need to send us either 1 or 2 documents for that. And basically you have to show us what you're paying for and that you have indeed paid for it. So if you order something from Amazon and you pay for it with a credit card, it's 1 document because it's all on that 1 page. We can see a 0 balance. We see the last 4 numbers of your credit card, I think, and we see what you've paid for. But if you have to do like a PO form through your organization and it goes through bookkeeping, well, there might be 1 order form that is that, and then a different form that shows the payment. So in that case, you would send us 2. So yeah, but again, we're trying to be simple, straightforward, and easy peasy.
Okay, and then let's see. So that really is also the reporting. This isn't that part. No. Okay. So if you could speak about the reporting, and I'm going to turn off, mute myself. And also, so this is money needs, the spending happens June 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. Okay, question. Okay. All right. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. So you're not authorized to spend money before you're awarded money. So when the contract is established, as soon as you have signed it and we have signed it, you sign first and then we do, immediately we will email you a notification that your contract is executed. That's the term that's used. Once you're, from the date of execution of your contract, we can accept any expenses that you have. And all of these contracts are going to be set up to end June 30th, 2022. But whether your contract starts in, July 14th or August 31st, depends upon how quickly we can turn out these contracts. We're not doing them in the library. We have a separate financial division in the Secretary of State, and we're expecting to do over 250 contracts. So it depends not only on how quickly we can do it, but on how quickly they can do it. But we've been meeting with them and we have a plan in place, and we hope we don't get swamped, but we're going to do it to the best of our ability.
Yes, there's an even bigger pot of money that's going toward libraries as well. So they'll be very busy.
Yeah. And the reporting again will be very similar to the application. We will probably ask, what did you buy? Was it suitable to what you needed? Is there something you would have done differently? And, maybe any data that you might have gathered, or if you do programming. So if you have a program where you have people from the public coming in, then we will ask you to do a 4 or 5 question evaluation with them. And that can be just, you can give them a survey link to do it online, or you can hand out paper, whichever you think is better for them. But it's virtually, I learned something new today. Strongly agree, strongly disagree, so, yeah. Okay.
Anyone else? Yeah, Joe.
Yes. Mara, I enjoyed your presentation. I have a question for you on the criteria for projects. The inclusion is mentioned there.
Mhm.
Would a project that goes to help people with impairments qualify?
Absolutely.
Something, under the Americans with Disabilities Act?
We would love that. We would love to see that. Yes.
Okay, because that's what we were thinking at Historic
Yeah.
Fort Steilacoom, is that we could, perhaps upgrade some restrooms, for, people with impairments.
Okay, you bring up a very good point. We are limited by the Library Services and Technology Act. We cannot do any, what do they call it, construction. So
The capital expenses?
no capital improvements, right? But with this money, they have agreed that we can pay for all materials. So for example, we have a tribal library that is going to put in automatic doors because they do not have ADA compliant doors. So they're going to purchase the doors with ARPA money, and then they're contracting with someone else. I mean, I'm imagining probably tribal members are going to do the construction part. We have had success in the past with local groups pitching in. Like, for example, remember the example with the picnic tables? We've had local groups where, like, the Lions Club comes in and lays down cement to fix the picnic tables into. So we can buy all materials. We cannot pay for any construction. If your regular staff can do it with the regular tools you find in a toolbox, you don't need to hire an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter, then you can do it. If you're assembling materials from IKEA, very good. But if you have to pay, and especially if it's anything that is prevailing wage, that's like a huge red flag. We could never pay for that. Okay.
Okay, so what I understand then is that we could buy materials, but you will not pay for labor like for a plumber.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And that sounds like a big, and I'm sorry, but there's no way that we can get around that. That's a regulation.
Understand. I
Yeah,
just wanted
yeah.
to know that up front. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great question. Nicole.
Hi there. Nice to meet you all. So I have a question. Just I just want to clarify, make sure what I might consider applying for would make sense. But I'm thinking about how this might fit into connectivity or something like that. But we start because of the pandemic, we started a virtual lunch and learn series. And so part of the expenses for that is paying for speakers, paying for marketing, staff time, all that kind of stuff. Would that be considered something that we could use as a project for funding, or is it not? Like, how does that fit into this grant?
Okay, we're asking for new projects, but if it
Or
was a
like-
project that was created because of the pandemic, then it
Okay.
qualifies. So it's considered then ongoing but specific to the pandemic. So that absolutely would qualify. We cannot pay for staff time that is regularly scheduled full-time staff. Now, if you have someone who works regularly 20 hours a week and they're going to work an extra 10 hours a week on this grant specifically, then yes, we could pay for the extra 10 hours a week.
Okay,
Okay.
so would then okay, let me just rethink this then.
Mhm.
So what if it was something like, we want, out of the pandemic came a project to create a 360 scan of our museum. And we have to pay for, it looked like from your list, we could pay for consultants or
Mhm.
for contractors to work on that project.
Mhm.
So if, let's say, we needed to hire an intern to help us, get what we need for that 360 scan to make it into a tour to give access to people around the community, that could be paid for. This one.
Yes, and we had a couple of museums do that last year with CARES funding that
Okay.
we supported. Yeah, definitely. And you asked about promotion, and you can do promotion. There's another tab in the LibGuide that says acknowledgements, which is kind of important because we hope that you will acknowledge the Secretary of State and Washington State Library. We
Mhm.
are required to ask you to acknowledge IMLS, which probably we want to do anyway, but that needs to be done in everything that you do. So any kind of publicity or anything like that, you have to have that on there. And your publicity or promotion is limited to the specific project. So we would love it if it said, an response to pandemic. Well, that's poorly worded, but project, paid for in part with funding from IMLS and Washington State Library. There's a lot of wording in there, and there are lots of examples of how to use it. So,
Okay.
yeah. So as long as you can do promotion, as long as it's specific, and you can't buy like prizes or things like that, or food.
Okay.
That's another big no-no. So, no.
Great. And I got a direct message from Mariah, who would like to go ahead and ask a question.
Thank you. Sorry, my internet's been cutting out here.
Oh,
So my question is about, we think we want to try to have a virtual program to be able to share what we have here and are doing here. Can it pay for funding, like the purchasing of having a professional videographer come do videotaping and producing that?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's when I was referring to the museums that did it last summer with our CARES funding, that's the kind of thing that they did. They paid for videographer, they paid for, I think, camera and microphone. I'm not sure how far the money goes. Those were very small grants, though. I think those were around the $3,000 mark. Another thing they paid for was, I think, transcripts.
Okay.
Yeah.
And could
For
it also,
that, yeah.
if you had like to-go bags that people could pick up, could that be included as well? Like, like
Yes.
craft kits
Yes.
for kids? Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had to-go bags that had STEM or STEAM kind of projects. And I think mainly they were just, paper projects to get out and do, but it can be exciting to, for a child to be handed a bag and, oh, you take this home, and then you keep learning what you saw in the video, or you keep learning what you saw in the story walk, something like that. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Great. Okay, Rachel.
Hi, thank you so much for this. It's been really informative and a great use of time today. I'm interested in the project I'm thinking of would be less of um, a virus response, pandemic response, and more on the DEI side. And I'm wondering if that is allowed. We're looking at redoing our style book for our collections and cataloging to have more inclusive language. In response to being more inclusive to the LGBTQIA community and the BIPOC community, and changing language within the way we catalog our collections in response to that. And it would be for taking a part-time staff member and funding them to do that specific project.
I'm not sure, because I'm thinking about timelines and because of the, direct and immediate. And also that's sort of an interior thing, although it ends up being public facing through your catalog. I think, Rachel, we should have a conversation offline.
Okay.
So that we can ask more questions. And also it might be something that I would need to check with our federal officer about.
Okay, thank
But,
you.
I mean, we're totally open to doing it, but I just think the details we need to, get a little bit deeper into.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, I'd
Okay.
love to have the conversation though.
Okay, I'm going to pull a few questions out of the chat. Anne was asking about translation services to translate labeling into Spanish, hiring a local translation firm.
Okay, I'm having the same reaction of the immediate and direct, but it is EDI.
And
I don't know, I
assuming-
guess, yeah, we'd like to see, I'd like to, have a chat and get a few more details on it.
Sure.
I
would
mean, it
assume
sounds
would
like,
be
yeah,
labeled in the museum, like in the displays would be my
Yeah,
assumption.
yeah, it certainly hits one of the focal points. So I wouldn't say no out of hand at all, but yeah, I just think that rather than giving a fast answer now, something that I'd like to have an offline discussion about, but totally open to it, but let's get a few more details, please. Yeah.
And then we have another question about if SEPA needed if it's just staff who will be accessing the internet, if it's not a public access?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. If it's paid for with federal funding, it has to be SEPA compliant. And yeah, we have no wiggle room at all on that. Yeah.
Got it.
It doesn't mean that other things, it doesn't mean that anything else you have has to be SEPA compliant, only what you're paying for with the federal funding. Yeah. Oh, and I was just thinking about the, oh darn, I lost my train of thought. Something about what we were just talking about with the, oh yeah, connectivity. So I think that both of these last two projects that I said I'd like to see a little bit more detail on, I think that both of those could come under the realm of connectivity, because we don't want to think of connectivity as being only digital, because there are lots of parts of our communities that are not digitally connected, and they still need to be connected with pandemic. So that's why I think that things like cataloging and doing your guide and that, I mean, that definitely, I think we can consider those. I just think we need a little bit more detail.
Great. And then Jennifer asks, what is the grading rubric used to determine whether the project aligns with the grant? You said there was a 6-item checklist. And I think,
Yes.
is that the items on the spreadsheet?
No.
Oh, okay.
So to be totally transparent, we started doing the rubric and kind of things have got away from us. We have a first version of it. It's not ready for publication, but basically it's, does this align? Does this seem logical? Is the spending justified? I mean, because imagine, for example, that somebody said, oh, we want an award for $10,000 and we're going to buy 4 books, and, we want the ability to say, that doesn't really seem reasonable given what we think this money is supposed to be used for. So, and we did something very similar when we did the outreach grants last year. And it was just, kind of check, yes, check, yes, check, yes. And I think that we only had to turn down about 3 out of 30. But even if when I say turn down, we didn't absolutely turned them down. We said, look, these are problems that we see, and could we rework this? Would you like to reapply? And people did that. Or in one case they didn't, but probably better that, it wasn't worth their time, and maybe it just wasn't a good fit, maybe. So, yeah.
Great.
But we will make it available publicly when we have it finished. And I apologize that we don't have it finished. This has been a whirlwind. I mean, I can't tell you, this has been, we haven't had permission to do this until, I think mid-May. So it's been getting everything off the ground has been a heavy lift. Yeah.
And we'll work to get that out to everybody who's interested when it's available. Another clarification from Tom: the only forms needed for applying are just the application form and the budget. There's no form for a summary. That was my exact question when Maura and I first talking, and that's right.
Yeah, please, if you feel like there's some extra explanation is needed that we won't cop on to what you're planning, just feel free to add anything you want in that budget form, any kind of explanation that you like, or send us an email separately. We're very happy to receive it. If we don't understand it, we will ask you about it. So that's another option. We think it'll be fairly clear, and we didn't want people to have to spend time, getting into big justifications and things like that. What we want to do is do it as quickly as possible and give you the money so you have more time to work with it.
Great. I have a question about, can we apply for 2 opportunities at the same time?
You may apply for as many opportunities as you can fit into the budget that corresponds to you. So if you want, we have
limited to the funding total.
You're limited to the funding, exactly. But if you could do 2 or 3 projects with the funding level that you qualify for, more power to you. And we believe that you know best what is going to be the best fit for your community and what's most needed in your organization. So we're not making any judgments on that.
Great. A question about how, finding or applying for a statewide vendor number. And I know in other grant programs I've worked with, there's a form you fill out, and I guess it depends on which office you send it to is the question. Would I go to the?
There's a link for it. It's in our frequently asked questions tab, but it is from the department, OFM. What's that? The Office of Finance and Management, I believe, is the state agency. Yeah, and they do those.
Okay, and we've used this before, so if you need assistance, I'm sure we could help you find that form and submit it. For Marianne, do visitors at our events qualify, or just to our museums? You mean for the threshold, the funding threshold?
The annual visitor. What's the difference between if they're coming to your museum physically, that counts?
Or like an event?
We have events down on the street, like the Apple Squeeze or the Salmon Bake that we sponsor over in a park that's nearby. Would visitors?
Is it exclusively sponsored by your organization?
Yes.
Yes, that counts.
Okay. So exclusively sponsored events plus.
Yeah, if it's, if you're joining in at the farmer's market, we're not going to count everyone that goes to the farmer's market. But if you're the official sponsor of the event, yes, absolutely. If you have school groups coming through, you can count every child. Yeah.
Great. All right.
We might ask you for documentation, but I'm sure you have that in, I don't know, minutes somewhere,
We do have a question about proposal deadline, which is a good question. Did you have a specific date for that, Mara, or?
There is no deadline. The deadline is the end date. So we need a contract. I would say on a good day, a contract development will take between 4 and 6 weeks. If we get swamped, it might take longer. The spending deadline is June 30th. So if you get a contract right away, you have more time to use your money. But if you got a contract next March, well, first, I don't know if we still have funding next March, But if you got a contract next March and you could spend it by June, it's not a problem. Yeah. But we have money reserved, I think $350,000 for museums. And when that's gone, it's, I say when that's gone, it's gone. I'm not sure that if we got an overwhelming response, I think we would try to find more money. But no promises, but just, you know, I can promise that we will be as responsive as possible, and we want to be responsive. So, yeah.
Great. Jane says, I read you were hoping to fund about 80 museums. How is that number determined?
Well, we looked at the total dollar amount that we wanted to dedicate to museums, and then we looked at the annual visits and divided that up. And we thought about how many we would expect in each category. And I don't remember the figures exactly, but I think for the top category, we were thinking that we might get about 10 really large organizations. And we thought we'd probably get the most of the smallest organizations. So, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's a rough estimate to the best of our abilities.
Is the total, you said the total amount 350,000 to be dispersed between approximately 80 institutions, museums?
In 80 awards, yeah. But that's, you know, that's what we're trying to do estimate wise. We're not guaranteeing that we're giving that amount of money. We're not guaranteeing that we're giving that amount of awards. Could be more, could be less. But, you know, we had to carve up the pie, and, you know, we worked with Allison and Jay, and we all did our best. So, yeah.
We worked with the data we had.
Yes.
I understand.
Yeah.
What was the total amount awarded?
$3.7 million, not to the Secretary of State exactly. This was awarded to the State Library Agency, SLAA.
3.7 million?
Yeah. So the way they do it, so IMLS has more money than that for awards to museums and for awards to libraries. But they took us, I think they had, I'm not going to remember the correct amount, but of their big pie, they said, we want this part to go out to each state. And they do a formula where they give each state the same base amount, and then per population, they add a different amount. So Florida, California, and Texas are the huge ones, and they get more money. And they reserve money. And so some of you may have seen a deadline. IMLS has a museum application open right now in the national level, and that deadline is June 28th. So, but we do not expect them to give us more money. But we don't know so we have set aside money for tribes. We've set aside money for county law libraries because we found out they got nothing from CARES funding. We set aside money for academic libraries, for their 50 colleges and universities in Washington State that are, I mean, there's more than that, but those are the ones that are recognized as degree conferring certified. No, I can't remember the term they use, but accredited degree conferring. No, so those are our categories. And each one of those has a different pot of money and slightly different ways to qualify. And they all have codes except you.
The unique ones over here.
Yeah, well, when we report on this money to the Library Services and Technology Act or to IMLS, sorry, Institute of Museum and Library Sciences, we have to specify how much money goes to which type of library. So that's why we needed codes for them, but not for you. Yeah.
Got it. All right, we've got a question about if people did want to do 2 projects, would they need to submit 2 applications, or can they just fit it all on one form?
Only do one.
One form. Okay, keep it simple.
Oh, yeah, and I would like to say the magic word too is amendment. So if you get an award and find out that you're not going to be able to spend the money as you had envisioned, we can make an amendment in what you can spend it on, because that will be specified in your contract, and also on the amount. So we can always do it, but I would say get an application in, let's get a contract established first, and if later whatever happens, and you say, oh my goodness, we were planning to do this, but that's really not going to work for our community, we'd rather do X, then you can write to us and tell us, and we can see if we can amend it. So amendments are much easier than contracts.
That's true. Any match required?
Any math?
Matching.
Match. Say math. No match. No match required. And I mean, we hope that this could be like seed money in some of your organizations. I talked to a college this morning that's going to use this as kind of, they're going to use the amount that they're getting, and they're hoping to triple it for the program they want to do. So sometimes when you've got a little bit of money, you can go to another organization. Like I was talking about doing the installation for something. Well, if you already have the award to pay for it, then you might interest a local club in helping out. They get glory for the project, we get glory for the project, and they know that you've already got some money in the game.
Yeah.
So that can be very helpful, I think.
And sorry, there was a second part to that question in the chat.
Oh.
Would communicating other community local contributions help the grant application, or would it not really necessarily apply?
Yeah, so with our normal funding, which is from the same source, when we do our annual reports, we do need match, and we do need something that's called maintenance of effort, which is a complicated formula. So normally we would be delighted for any match, but unfortunately, they're not allowing us to count any match with this, which, you know, we're just saying, oh my goodness, but we're generating so many things, but no, we can't do it. So no, we can't, but hopefully it'll work well for you. Yeah.
Sounds good. And if the funding is for a videographer to create a virtual program, is the SEPA required? So if it's not directly internet related, but it is some type of virtual product, would the SEPA apply?
No, because the device is not connected to the internet.
Mm.
You're hiring the videographer who's using their own equipment, right? And so there's no devices connecting to even if you bought a video camera to use, that video camera is not connected to the internet.
Got it.
Yeah. Unless there's a kind I don't know about, but yeah.
Or maybe if it's like a streaming thing, then that would be a different story.
Well, but it'd be streaming through your platform that we're not paying for. You know, it's the device itself. Like, for example, if you buy a hotspot or a mobile Wi-Fi that you plug into a computer, that is connected to the internet, and that would have to be filtered.
So the literal device that connects your institution to the internet, not just any device that connects to the internet.
Right.
Okay, that's a helpful clarification.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and then I'm sorry, Tom, you had your hand up also, very patiently waiting over there. Go ahead. There you go.
I think I worded my first question not very well, but with this SEPA, which I think you answered for me, if we had technology devices that would be on the internet and only staff is using it, and you said yes to that, I didn't know if you're going, oh yes, you need to, or yes, you are correct that you don't need to. So
sorry. If you are buying a device with federal money that we are giving you, it must be SEPA compliant. It doesn't matter if the staff is using it or if your patrons are using it or if it's sitting in a drawer, never used. If we're paying for it with federal money, it must be SEPA compliant.
Okay, and a device would be what? Would that be like
a laptop, a tablet, a phone, a hotspot?
So anything that could be used on the internet, even if it's not being used on the internet?
A router, a modem.
Okay, so it's not just the router modem, it would include anything that could be connected to that to go out on the internet.
If we're paying for it.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to equipment that you already have or equipment that you pay for with other funding. There, if you go to the FAQ, there's a link to the Child Internet Protection Act, and you can get more
Okay.
information there. And also, we would be very happy if you have a specific list of things to check them for you. And also, there is a in the allowable, there was that kind of colored thing that was on the right side of one of the screens I showed you in the presentation. And that is in the allowable expenses tab. In that, it specifies which ones would have to be SEPA compliant.
Okay.
So it says SEPA compliant laptop or SEPA compliant, blah, blah. Yeah.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
If you're doing hotspots or something like that, you can ask your internet provider to filter them for you.
So if it's filtered, then we don't need the SIPA?
Well, I think, I'm not
So
sure.
if we have Comcast, I mean, we have
Mhm.
Comcast, but they have filter capabilities. All we need to do is turn those on and we'd be good.
I think you still have to I think you have to say that you have the compliance. I
Okay.
think that's a check box on if you're requesting funding for something that requires SEPA compliance, I think that's in the contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll check into it further. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm happy to do that if you just want to email me details.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I think we got through all of the chat questions as well. There was another question that is it being recorded? And yes, this is recorded for folks who hopped on late. We'll be able to send out a recording to everyone first thing tomorrow.
And Jay, can you send them our email?
Yes, I can email everybody the link to the pages we've talked about, some information, Mara's email, a link to this video. We'll send you all the information if you registered, and then we'll maybe do some follow-up emails as well, just checking in with folks.
I'm happy to have you send them my email, but a more useful email would be the WSL grants email.
Oh, okay. Yeah, which is right on the form.
Because there are more people that are checking that.
Fair enough. Any last questions? We actually did the whole hour, even though the presentation was short, there were a lot of questions. So yeah, Jane, you're muted. I'm gonna ask you to unmute. Jane, you're muted.
There. Yeah, sorry, my mouse is dead. The selection process, is there, Mara, already a board or an entity or someone, people selected that will be determining who gets funded? How is that process?
It's first come, first serve.
Oh, okay. So it isn't put before a committee that says no or yes?
No, it's not competitive. It's first come, first serve.
Oh.
And with the caveat that if we have questions about whether or not it meets the parameters set up by IMLS, then we might have to go back to you, and we can't, guarantee.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
And ask who the best person to follow up with is, and we can start that with the grants email. And then if you do have sort of a complicated situation, we'll get you a phone number that you could talk to somebody, but we just kind of start inquiries via email. I think will be easiest for track of who has what questions. So.
We are working remotely in my part of the office. In fact, I am in a cabin in northern Idaho, but I will be back in Olympia tomorrow. Don't want to miss that heat wave. And, but I won't be working tomorrow. Oh, I might be working tomorrow evening, and I'll probably be working Saturday. So yeah, if you don't get a prompt response tomorrow, it's because I'm on the road.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, you can follow up with email with more questions, but we're really happy to see the amount of interest in this. I was telling Mara we were a little nervous because we sent the notice out back on Friday, and we had a good response and a lot of registrations. So we're excited to see people use this money and get it out there. So thank you, everyone. And we'll follow up via email tomorrow with all the links and everything. And in the meantime, feel free to email us if you have other questions.
Thank you all so much. We really look forward to getting your applications.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Very informative.